2022 regular meeting of the Mill Creek City Council to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance and I'll lead it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Naomi, roll call, please.
Yes. Mayor Holtzclaw,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Benel,
Here.
Councilmember Cavallari,
Here.
Councilmember Steckler,
Here.
Councilmember Allison,
Here.
Councilmember Duque,
Here.
Councilmember Paddock.
Present.
Well, what do you know? We don't need a motion to excuse tonight. So let's go right into the agenda. Presentations. Martin, you can introduce the Health Board presentation? Oh, I'm sorry. Ending the year on a bad note. Audience communication. Would anyone like to address the council? I'll start with anyone in attendance in the chambers. Seeing no heads nod. Anyone online? Nope. Okay, now we'll go to our presentations. Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So we're happy to announce that I believe it's a kind of a yearly presentation that we have Snohomish County Health Board here tonight, and I'm proud to announce that Carrie Parker, who is the Prevention Services Assistant Director, will be presenting to us just an overview of the Snohomish County District Administration Services, along with some data that's related to Mill Creek and how it relates to the services that they provide for our city. There's also a big change with both Snohomish County and the Health District. As you recall, the interest that we signed over to Snohomish County recently is related to that as well. And Carrie will provide an overview of structural change. So with that, I'll hand over to Carrie. Thanks, Carrie.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your time this evening. My name is Carrie, and I am one of the assistant directors of the Health District. I oversee primarily programs related to disease prevention in our Prevention Services Division. And I'm just going to give you a real quick overview today of some of the services and the highlights that have happened at the Health Districts in 2022. So Naomi, I believe that you had a presentation. You were going to Wonderful. So we can go ahead and flip to the first slide there. Thank you. So this is a little bit of a busy slide, but I will be breaking down each of these bubbles in the coming slides to kind of highlight some of the different services that are going on around the Health District. These 5 bubbles that you see on the screen there represent the 5 divisional or program areas that we have at the Health District. We are currently about 140 staff strong. We are growing for the first time since about 2007. We had about 258 employees at that time. So we're not quite back to the glory that we once were, but we are certainly thrilled to be looking at growth and adding programs and adding some different ways that we can better serve our communities. So again, we're about 140 now. That's up from 108 just a couple years ago. So if we go forward, back to the bubble slide. There we go. Oh no, back one more. Sorry. Just to kind of highlight the areas that I'll be going over. So I'll talk a little bit about our environmental health division, which is the bubble over there on the left. And environmental health includes our food safety, our land use, and our safe environments program. I'll talk about our customer service counter that oversees vital records for the county, as well as all of our permitting. Prevention services is the big bubble on the bottom there, and that is a lot of our community outreach programs, as well as all of our disease control programs. I'll talk about our administrative services, and at this point, I'll talk a little bit about the merger that's going on and some of the different pieces that have been occurring around the merger. And then I will give an overview of our current advisory structures, which includes our Board of Health and a couple advisory committees that we'll address. So if we move to the next slide, I'll go ahead and start with environmental health. This is the division that is probably the most visible in our community. You may have seen these folks out and about doing maybe some shellfish digging out along the coast in our county, trapping mosquitoes for disease surveillance, working in schools to do inspections, doing food safety inspections, doing septic or building reviews. They are a busy group, and you'll see some of the things that they have been doing specifically to Mill Creek in the box up there. They did issue almost 65 new restaurant permits in Mill Creek this year and did an additional 51 routine inspections. They did 8 year-round pool inspections. So these are typically going to be your school pools in schools that the swim teams use, as well as things like YMCA pools. And then an additional 11 seasonal pools. These are often pools that are associated with apartment complexes or things like that that just open up seasonally. They address 2 different septic complaints. They also do septic review for new builds just to make sure that our surface water and our lakes and our rivers are not being impacted by our sewage. And they responded to 6 different solid waste complaints within the city limits of Mill Creek. The pictures along there on the bottom, you'll see them doing a pool inspection. I believe the one on the left is a temporary summer food event. And then the one on the right is an environmental health specialist that is working in a school to inspect their science lab to make sure that all of their venting is working properly, that chemicals are being disposed of properly, and things like that. We go to the next slide. We're moving along to our customer service division. So the customer service division is really our frontline staff folks. So if you come in to visit the health district, these are the folks you're most likely to interface with first, and that will address your questions and requests. Their primary focus throughout the day is doing permitting. So they work on our food permits, our septic system permits. It's a very busy time of year for permitting right now, as we have a lot of renewals going on. And they spend a lot of their time during the day addressing and finding information for businesses in our community, builders and developers, the general public, mortuaries and funeral homes, and that kind of speaks to the stats you see there. They are also the vital record, responsible for the vital record issuance in our county. And last year alone, they issued almost 45,000 birth and death certificates throughout the year. So this is a huge undertaking. You'll see our front desk staff as part of this group. We have an equal number of folks that are working behind the counter, answering questions, pulling files, things like that, to serve the public all day long. Our next slide is our prevention services. That was that big bubble in the bottom. This is kind of the biggest bang for the buck in this area is our communicable disease control and response area. There are about 140-ish different reportable diseases that are required to be reported to the health district when they are diagnosed anywhere in our county by the physician's office or the lab. All of those different conditions have a varying level of response that can be very minimal. For example, things that are reported to us that the standard response is that we activate surveillance and we watch to make sure clusters aren't forming. Or they can go all the way to the other end of the spectrum, that a single case activates activities such as contact tracing, symptom monitoring, coordination of treatment, coordination of isolation and quarantine, cross-county coordination, and all the way down the line. So what you see on the screen there is just an example of 6 of those 140 common things that we respond to throughout the year. So this year, just in the first half of the year, so you'll see these stats are just through August, we had 337 cases of hepatitis B or C. We had 22 new HIV diagnoses in our county. We had combined there, what is that, about 90 foodborne illness complaints that we responded to and tracked. Syphilis is an infection that continues to grow in our county. When I worked in STDs probably 10 years ago, it was unheard of to have a syphilis case. I think we had one when I worked down in that program, and now we have 58. It's an extremely complex condition that takes a lot of legwork to work through a syphilis case. And similarly with tuberculosis. So with syphilis and HIV, we actually have a designated group that works all of our HIV as well as our STD cases. So they do all sorts of testing, symptom monitoring, partner notification, treatment coordination just for STDs and HIV. And similarly, tuberculosis has its own complete separate group that just works TB cases. That number looks fairly small, but tuberculosis is again an extremely complex infection. It's very contagious. It's takes about 9 months, 6 to 9 months usually is a treatment course for tuberculosis. It's an extremely complicated process that we monitor and work with that patient throughout their whole 6 to 9 months treatment. So we have nurses that just work that infection alone. Let's see. We also have continued to work on COVID response. Primarily, we are working with schools and childcares right now on dealing with COVID outbreaks. We had a couple new infections pop up that we were are not used to responding to in monkeypox. I think at the last look, we had about 40 cases of monkeypox in our county this year. And we also saw some bird flu in our county this year. So we always are seeing new infections as well that we are learning how to respond to and how to contain and control within our communities. So again, that's just a very small snapshot of some of the infections and diseases that we're constantly responding to. Disease prevention and response is not the only thing that happens in prevention services. If you look over on the left there, there's a list of some of the other activities that go on in this division. Community health assessment, we also house all of our epidemiologists and assessment team in prevention services, and they've been working very hard this year on a community health assessment, gathering data from all different data points around the county and around the state, and really looking at trends for different health metrics in our community. And these will drive not only the activities of the health district, but they're also used by our hospital districts and many of our community partners to help drive not only their activities, but funding opportunities that we can get to come into the county. So it's an extremely important tool. It's done every 4 to 6 years. And with COVID kind of putting a halt to most activities the last couple of years, we are a bit overdue on our community health assessment. So we're really thrilled that our EPI team can really focus on this year and work with many of our partners to go through this data and get a better picture of what's going on with the health status of our community. You see a couple down there that we also have a refugee health screening program in prevention services. We have screened about double what is normal or what is typical for us to see coming into the community. So when refugees or those that have obtained refugee status come into Snohomish County, we do some basic health screening. We will screen them for tuberculosis, and we will help connect them with health services as they arrive in the county to make sure that we are preventing and controlling the spread of any communicable diseases. We have a large injury prevention outreach program that really focuses a lot on overdoses and opioid prevention programs. They work to make sure that law enforcement around our community has access to Narcan. They do a lot of education around suicides and infant safety. And we also have a large child care outreach team that supports our child cares around the community and everything from disease outbreak control to disaster planning to working with children with food allergies, all up and down the spectrum. In addition to the things you see there, we also have a maternal child health program in this division, and they work to support families with breastfeeding, to support families who have children with special health care needs, and to prevent lead exposures in our community. So that's just kind of an overview of that division. And if you want to jump to the next one, this is our fourth, this is our final staffed division. So this is our administration division. And these are, of course, the folks that make sure that the rest of us can do our jobs. They have been extremely busy this year. First of all, we've had a lot of turnover. So we welcomed a new health officer, our longtime health officer, Dr. Chris Spitters, that many of us know and are very familiar with from the COVID pandemic, retired. And we welcomed Dr. James Lewis, who joined us from King County, and we were thrilled to have him. We also are seeing a turnover of our administrative officer at the end of this year. Sean Frederick will be leaving us, and Dennis Worsham will be joining the health district as our new administrator. Many folks are familiar with Dennis as he has worked for Snohomish Health District before, and he was previously the interim director for King County. So he'll be coming up to join us as well. So a lot of turnover in our administrative division. But they are the folks that are responsible for managing about a $30 million budget from our 2022 budget. This is primarily from grants and our foundational public health dollars from the state. We are still receiving some COVID funds as well to support those activities. And they are also preparing for the integration. We will, at the end of this year, go from being an independent service district, the Snohomish Health District, to a part of our county government. So we will be known as Snohomish Public Health. So it'll take me a while to get used to that. I've been with the health district for almost 22 years now. So now we will be a health department under the county structure. We are preparing to move over under the county fairly whole. We actually aren't preparing to move at all. We will maintain our current location on Rucker Avenue in Everett, at least for the time being. We will move over with our own administrative structures as well as the programmatic structures that we've already kind of gone over. But administration has been very, very busy making sure that all of that behind the scenes stuff for that integration happens, so that things like all of our human resources systems are ready to integrate over into the county. Things like our 220 active contracts that the health district has are transferred over to the county. Things like our facility, our building, all of our technology, all of our fleet are rolled over into the county system. Our job descriptions, our benefits, our union agreements, all of those things that have to be done for all of us to continue providing good service as well as get a paycheck after the first of the year have really been the focus at the beginning of this merger. There are other things that we will have to continue to work on after the initial first of the year rollover, but administration has really shouldered the bulk of this merger so far in making sure all of those pieces are in place for the next 2 weeks. As I mentioned, the health district has about 220 active contracts. These are for all of our professional services, our equipment, our goods, our emergency services that we have in place. So all of those have to be managed by our administration. And then we have a fantastic communications program and communications package, no matter what platform you prefer to get your information on, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or the web or web pages. These are all maintained by our administration communications group. They have some fantastic campaigns. In addition to our websites, they also oversee the No Overdose Snohomish County website, as well as the Vax Up website. If you're not familiar with any of these, I really encourage you to jump on and take a look at some of the information out there. It's kept very up to date. It's very interactive, and they work really, really hard. Our communications team is definitely a feather in our cap at the health district. And then if you'll move to the next slide, just kind of before I take questions. Oh, I'm sorry, I have one more, of course. This is our overseeing body. We have a couple overseeing bodies that guide our work at the health district. We, of course, have our Board of Health. We have a 15-member Board of Health. It's all elected officials currently. And we also have a Public Health Advisory Committee, and that is made up of different folks from different healthcare and social services sectors. that provide guidance for us. And then we also have a Community Equity Advisory Board that is made up of leaders throughout our community, of communities that are typically underserved, to help guide us and make sure that we are serving and representing our entire community the way that we want to be. So these are currently our oversight boards. Our Board of Health will look a little bit different after the integration. We will be moving to a board that is smaller. We won't have a 15-person board. It will still contain elected officials that represent different size communities within our county, but it will also be made up of some folks from the health sector as well as tribal leadership. So right now, the county does have applications available for those that want to serve on the newly formed Board of Health after the first of the year. All right, and now moving to the last slide before I move into questions, I just wanted to take one quick note to say that we're super excited to kind of be getting back out and connecting with our communities in ways that we haven't been able to for a couple of years. So we are really pushing any time that you have an event, a community event, a city event, where folks are gathering, we would love to be a part of that and represent any of the services that you would like highlighted at those programs. We got out to about 22 health fairs and events this last summer, again, for the first time in 2 years. And we're just really wanting to connect with our community and the folks that we're serving, again, on a face-to-face level that we have been missing for so long. So you'll see some of the stars there, and Mill Creek is kind of there all by itself without a star. So we need to find ways to get out to Mill Creek. So if you have community events this summer or any other time, please reach out to the health district and we can find a program that is suitable for that event. And we would love to come and talk with the folks of Mill Creek. And that's all I've got. And I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Carrie, for the presentation. Any questions? Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Carrie. Thanks for the presentation. One of the things over the past few budget cycles has been kind of a thorn in some of the city sides with the way you guys are budgeted, has been the cities, I guess, I don't want to say donating, the cities giving certain amounts of money per year. Has that all been resolved? Are you now fully funded and budgeted by the county, or will the city ask to be
Yes, good question. So we actually resolved that before we merged with the county. When we used to go to the cities to ask for a per capita contribution to public health services, it was because we didn't have any designated funding in the state legislature. So that ask was with the understanding that if we ever received that, we would no longer need it. So last year when we received foundational public health monies from the state legislature, we are no longer asking for or receiving anything from the cities.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Any other questions? See none. I can't see if John has a question. Naomi, can you unshare the screen?
I already unshared.
Oh.
Something wrong there?
Well, we're
Yeah, I'm
through.
remoting in. I'm fixing.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
The Zoom feed is fine.
Okay, no other questions. Well, thank you again, Carrie, for coming out. Appreciate it. And someone can get in touch with you about the Mill Creek Festival next summer.
We would love to. We would love to be out there again. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 7A, proposed new initiatives, and I'm going to turn over to the Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, we have added in the proposed new initiatives an anti-Semitism proclamation. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in a time where hate speech and anti-Semitism is on the rise. And I strongly felt like this moment calls for us to actually stand up and make a strong statement that we will not tolerate anti-Semitism in our community. So I reached out to the mayor and asked him about putting forth the proclamation. And we had a few a few residents in the community that reached out and also asked if we would be willing to put together a proclamation. And then Councilmember Cavallari reached out as well and said that he would be interested. And I told him we'd already started one. So we worked together. And what I did for the proclamation that you see before you or either in your agenda packet, I basically took the county and Bellevue have both already passed one, Bellevue City Council and the County Council. And so I took the strong points that I felt were extremely important and touched on the things I felt were extremely important to drive home. And then I pulled together some language that Councilmember Cavallari also had recommended and merged them together to come up with this proclamation that you see before you tonight. So I bring this to you first for your discussion and for your consideration this evening.
Yeah, first, any questions, comments on the form of the proclamation, and then we'll open it up if anyone wants to speak to it before, if there's no objection before me reading it. Councilman Cavalier?
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have any changes. Did you want my comments?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I would like to acknowledge Ms. Regina Friedland, who is the Regional Director of the American Jewish Committee, who's in the audience this evening. Thank them for showing strong leadership for the community and making sure that we are aware of these issues. You know, whenever we get together and start drafting resolutions and putting language together, whether it's a resolution, an ordinance, or a proclamation, we conduct a fair amount of research, and I know I try to do my due diligence to make sure that whatever we're putting on paper is accurate. It's a correct assessment of what's happening in our community. I have to say I was quite alarmed at some of the research and what I had uncovered. By the time we get to the 5th or 6th whereas clause, when the mayor reads it into the record, it showed that 55% of all hate crimes religiously motivated are committed against the Jewish people. And they make up only 2% of our community, and that number is just shocking to me. So what is the city's responsibility? What's our role here? Is to really just simply make sure that we give a stern message that's just not going to be tolerated within our borders. So we memorialize a resolution here this evening and show as an elected body our unification and our resolution with Jewish people. Also want to thank my friend Steve Abramowitz, who's probably listening remotely, who also had a large part in bringing this to our attention, and say thank you, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and God bless men and women of our community. Thank you.
Any other comments? Any other comments or discussion? John, no? Okay. Hearing no objection, I will read the proclamation. This is a proclamation of the City Council of Mill Creek, Washington, condemning and rejecting anti-Semitism and reaffirming Mill Creek's commitment to ensuring our community is a safe and welcoming place to live, work, and visit. Whereas the city of Mill Creek is a diverse city and takes great pride in our diversity and respect for all people, our local Jewish community contributes to our community in countless ways. And whereas the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum defines anti-Semitism as prejudice or hatred of Jews, the Holocaust, the state-sponsored persecution and murder of Jews by Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1933 and 1945, is the most extreme example of anti-Semitism in history. And whereas the city of Mill Creek supports the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition of anti-Semitism, which states, quote, "Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, towards Jewish community institutions and religious facilities," end quote. And whereas in August 2021, Washington State recorded 451 hate crimes, the third most in the entire country and fifth most per capita, according to the Anti-Defamation League. In August 21, reports of anti-Semitic incidents in Washington State were up 60% from the previous year. Similarly, reports of hate crimes and incidents in Seattle increased nearly 400% from 2012 to 2018. And whereas the use of anti-Semitic language, conspiracy theories, Holocaust denial, and hatred towards Jewish people has increased exponentially the past decade and has led to increased attacks against the Jewish people. According to the FBI, while Jewish people account for no more than 2% of the US population, Jews were the target of 55% of all religiously motivated hate crimes in recent years. And whereas the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism has proven to be an essential tool for government and law enforcement agencies in the United States in efforts to identify contemporary manifestations of anti-Semitism, respond directly to anti-Semitism, and provide training and education about anti-Semitism. And whereas hatred and bias in any form are not acceptable in our community, the City of Mill Creek remains committed to our vision of welcoming the world and recognizing our diversity as a key strength for the city and our character. And whereas any victims of anti-Semitism in the City of Mill Creek are urged to report any incidents as hate crimes or bias-related events so that local law enforcement can respond, track such incidents, and bring perpetrators to justice. Now, therefore, I, Brian Holtzclaw, Mayor of the City of Mill Creek, on behalf of the City Council and as supporters and allies of our Jewish community, do hereby proclaim the City of Mill Creek's condemnation of anti-Semitism. The City of Mill Creek strongly stands against hate, bias, or violence based on identity and remains committed to the principles of non-discrimination and human rights. Signed this 13th day of December 2012. So I will sign it. I think we were going to do a photograph. Is that correct?
I think so.
Would you like to go ahead? You have the mic.
On behalf of the American Jewish Committee, AJC, we extend our thanks to the City of Mill Creek, Washington, its mayor, Brian Holtzclaw, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and the City Council on this proclamation's unequivocal condemnation of anti-Semitism and its adoption and utilization of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IHRA, working definition of anti-Semitism. We are grateful for your strong stand against all forms of hate and discrimination, your proactive support of the Jewish community, and recognizing the importance of the endorsement and use of this definition of anti-Semitism. With appreciation to you, Council Member Vignal, for initiating this. And with appreciation to Council Member Vincent Cavallari and to Steve Abramowitz of the Mill Creek View on all of your efforts with this. We're grateful. A fundamental step in combating the alarming surge in anti-Semitic incidents is to be able to define what anti-Semitism is, both in overt acts and through unconscious bias. The IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism is a comprehensive resource that describes anti-Semitism in the many forms that it manifests. Mill Creek is taking a leading role as Washington's second city and the first in Snohomish County to take this vital step against Jew hatred and in affirming that anti-Semitism will not be tolerated in your city. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out tonight. If the council will step forward, we'll take a picture. John was in the picture in spirit.
Yeah, I was gonna say somebody could have brought a laptop down and, held it for me, but that's okay. That's okay. Fine.
Okay, we are going to move on to item 9, new business, an ordinance for the 2021-22 budget amendment. Tonight, we'll hold a public hearing on the 2021-22 biennial budget amendment. Public notice of the hearings was published. The process we'll use tonight will be as follows. First, I'll ask for a motion to open the public hearing on the 2021-22 budget amendment. If there is a second and an affirmative vote, we will then receive a staff report from the Deputy City Manager, Laurel Brock, regarding the budget amendment. Next, we'll hear the public's testimony. Please limit your testimony to 3 minutes if you can. Once all members of the public in person or live online have had a chance to testify, I'll ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Next, council will engage in discussion and propose changes, if any, that the council would like to have made before adopting or considering and adopting an ordinance. Are there any questions on our process for this evening? Hearing or seeing none, is there a motion to open the public hearing on the 2021-22 biennial budget amendment?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. The hearing is open. Ms. Brock.
All right, so tonight. There we go. All right, so tonight we're just going to be looking at some final wrap up for the 21-22 budget. We had discussed some potential transfers that were going to be made when we were going over the 23-24 budget. So tonight I just wanted to go over, we have 2 main changes that are needed. So that when we have our audit, we don't have any kind of issues. So in the streets department, we had quite a bit of additional maintenance repairs. We had some accidents that took out 3 different Main Street light poles. So those are fairly expensive. We will get reimbursed for those lights through insurance, but that's just not going to be hitting in this specific budget cycle. So we do still have to acknowledge that those expenses happened, and we won't be able to offset those. So I did go ahead and include, we will need that $50,000 transfer from the general fund that we had discussed in our last final budget review. And I did go ahead and adjust the other revenues because it does look like they will be coming in slightly lower than we had projected. So for the revenues, we didn't necessarily have to adjust those. It's just cleaner and easier for everyone looking at what is happening. So the other fund that we'll be looking at is the Municipal Arts Fund. And this is just the utility box wrap project that we had approved, went a little bit over budget, and they have that funding in the actual fund. It's just that we did not have that much budget allocated for the 21-22 year. So I just wanted to pull this. This is something you saw in the final budget review for 23-24. I'm just highlighting. We did know that this $50,000 transfer from the general fund was going to be needed. I want to make it clear that we do not need any additional budget for the general budget authority for the general fund. We should have enough authority to cover this expense. Okay, so the main changes from this slide we saw in previous presentations is in this 2022 column. We just have some tweaks as far as revenues that are coming in. We've added that $50,000 payment from the general fund. And then I just wanted to make sure everyone saw with the revenues and expenses. So this is the 21 and 22 cycle. And then we are projecting to end up at around 24,000 at the end of the year. I will note that if that is higher, we just will need less of a transfer from the general fund in the future. We have around $33,000 annually expected. And so that's really everything for streets fund. And then just municipal arts, this should look the exact same as we saw in the final budget review. And we have this 10,202, and we have a remaining budget of $24,757 for a fund balance in the municipal arts fund. Does anyone have any questions?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay.
John, did you have any questions? Nope. Okay. At the end of the staff report, or do you have more?
That was it.
Okay. This is where we turn over to the public. Would any member of the public like to address the council on the proposed budget amendment? Seeing a nod of the head in the chambers. Anyone online like to address the council? Seeing none, can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes, and with that, the public hearing is closed, and that brings us to our new business. The first item being a consideration of an ordinance for the 2021-22 budget amendment per the staff report that we just heard.
Move to adopt an ordinance amending 2022 budget to adjust revenues and appropriations for specified funds.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. The record reflect, I saw Councilmember Stecker's hand go up. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes 7-0. The budget amendment is approved. Thank you, Laurel. Okay, that brings us to item B. Martin, you gonna address the last meeting scheduled for the year?
Yes, I will, Mayor. Thank you. Item B under new business is the proposal of cancellation of our December 27th council regular meeting. Wanted to say a few things. Almost to this date, about a year ago, I think it was actually December 14th, if I'm not mistaken, that we actually had the same discussion. Time sure flies. And at that time, we were pretty much looking up a cliff. I mean, a lot of challenges, uncertainties. We had a lot of other discussions that coincided with this day as well. Now I see it as a hill. Still a lot of things to work on, but I think we've done a lot of things to reassure the city that we are in a good place so far. Still a lot of things to work on. But operationally, I think we're in a very much stronger position than we were a year ago today. In my recommendation, the cancellation of that last week is the well-deserved cross. At least I could speak for our staff. And again, there's always that option of holding that special meeting if we have to in an emergency situation during that last week. So that's all I have, Mayor. Hand it over to council to make a decision and discuss. Thank you.
Is there any objection to canceling the December 27th meeting?
Mayor, based on the city manager's comments, I'd make a motion to cancel the December 27th regular meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Councilmember Stecker's hand went up. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes 7-0. So this is officially our last regular meeting of 2022. But we still have a few things to deal with tonight. The next of which is pipe repairs. City engineer, floor is yours.
Good evening and thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Naomi, can you bring up the presentation that I emailed you? Thank you, ma'am. So I'm coming this evening to follow our practice of bookending our construction contracts. And this one has been on the books for a very long time. This was one of the very first things that I presented to the city council about back in, I want to say, July of last year. So, and it was my desire to have this project presented to you and closed out before we ran into bringing a 2021 project to the 2023 city council meetings. So with that, next slide, please. I'm just going to quickly review the project and the construction work that was completed. I operate my usual practice of going over the project funding and expenses that we incurred on the project and the completion update. And this is meant to be the end point of a certain capital project. There's no decision that I'm asking for tonight. This is just a council update. Next slide, please. So this is just a little bit of review information on our aging infrastructure program. So what we have is a work program right now where we inventoried all the pipes 18 inches and greater. And we basically took all of the closed caption camera data that we had between 2012 and 2017. And we used that to develop a work plan of pipe repairs. And those were based on how the pipe condition was graded based on that camera data. So we gave it a grade of F for pipes that were in an imminent chance of failure, C, pipes that needed to be replaced or repaired within the next 10 years or so after identification, and pipes graded A, which required no repair. The grade F pipes were completed back in 2019. So the work plan of the last few years, including the current project under design right now, is for these pipes that were flagged for repair within 10 years of identification. Right now, that work plan on paper shows projects between 2020 and 2027. We've actually been moving a little faster than that pace and whatnot. And so one of the projects that I introduced into the capital plan that you reviewed here this year was essentially a refresh on that work plan going forward. Pipe conditions constantly change. It's a dynamic environment. And so we constantly have to kind of keep ahead of the pipe condition as it's developed. We also have a challenge going forward, which is to look at the pipes that are less than 18 inches in diameter. The focus of the earlier program was on pipe failures that might cause street sinkholes, similar to what happened in Sweetwater Ranch. Pipes that are 12 inches and smaller in size typically don't cause street potholing or street subsidence issues, but they can cause other issues. Among other things, they can limited flow in pipes, especially when we get one of our storm events, can cause street flooding and other related issues. And so we need to start looking at that as well. But that's for the future. I'd like to continue talking about this project for the present. Next slide, please. Oops. So typically speaking, we are not using methods to repair our pipes that require us to dig up the streets or sidewalks over those pipes. We're using trenchless technologies called slip lining for the most part. And this is just a couple brief pictures that shows what that looks like. Essentially, we run a slip line out of the back of a pickup. We run it from one manhole to another through the pipe. Then we inflate it to essentially stick the epoxy to the outside of the pipe, and then we cure it in place. When we're doing sectional pipe repairs, which are just individual, essentially patches, if you will, within a pipe, it's the same concept, except we're just sliding a specific patch to a specific area of pipe that's deteriorated, or we can slip line literally the whole pipe from catch basin to catch basin. And the before and after you see there is essentially what it looks like. We don't really add anything to the pipe. We're not adding any structural integrity to it. We're not reducing its diameter or any of its flow characteristics to any great degree and whatnot. What we're doing is giving that pipe a chance to last for its full design life, since pipes in practice don't always wear as uniformly as the intentions of design might want them to be. Next slide, please. So this on the screen is not an easy map to read, but you have it in your packets as well. This shows the various locations that we did pipe repairs over the course of the last year and a half. We were kind of hop skipping through residential neighborhoods for the most part. The blue bars that you see are cases of slip lining where we actually slip line from one catch basin to another. The orange spots that you see on the map were areas where we did just sectional pipe repairs within an existing pipe length. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, this contract was awarded in the middle of July. It was awarded to Allied Trenchless for $413,000. But the contract itself was unit price based. So we paid the contractor based on the measured quantities that were actually completed during construction. It wasn't a lump sum project. This project ran for quite some time. This was our one experience during the 2021-22 period with the supply chain issues that COVID generated for the construction industries, as there were several times in which we had to shut down the project, pause the project for on the order of 3 to 6 months on occasion, just to get the liner materials that we needed. In one case, we had a liner fail and unfortunately had to wait a certain period of time just to bring in the next liner to be able to try again on that one. Time did need to be extended for this, but we did this in such a fashion that the city did not incur any additional costs as a consequence of these continuing delays that occurred over the last year and a half. Next slide, please. So we didn't have any change orders that affected the contract sum that were brought to you, of course. And we had 3 locations that ended up getting deleted from this contract. Typically speaking, philosophically, with these pipe repair projects, we want to keep them moving right along. So if we run into an issue that it makes it difficult for the project to proceed, because we know we're going to return on the next project and continue pipe repairs, it's usually easier to kind of kick that to the next project rather than incur a lot of additional cost and delay to try and address a problematic pipe repair on the current contract. We had 3 examples. One example is a really tricky one. It ended up a pipe that during the entire year of 2022, that pipe was completely submerged in water. Unfortunately, it's also a pipe that outfalls into Penny Creek. So in order to isolate that pipe, that's a state permitting issue. So we're going to have to look at that in terms of looking at our options for how to repair that pipe. The second one I referred to here a few minutes ago, it was a failed installation on the part of the contractor. They brought in a second liner material that we had to wait a few months to get. Didn't cost us anything additional because they didn't correctly install it the first time. They tried again, they failed again. And this second failure was here about the end of October, beginning of November this year. And that's when I said, okay, no, we'll just move that one to the next one, because I didn't want to wait another 3 months for another liner just for one particular pipe repair. I didn't want to delay the entire project for that. The third one is a condition that we occasionally will run into, and we actually, in our current project, enhanced our pre-design inspection to kind of catch. Occasionally, some of our pipes were installed during the development of the neighborhood, and so the city didn't necessarily know what sorts of structures were placed within the catch basin. In this particular case, they placed a oil water separator that had no business being in a street catch basin. But it's not the easiest thing in the world to cut out of a catch basin again. So I kicked that one to a future project while I work with our maintenance staff to try and figure out how to remove that oil water separator without having to remove the whole catch basin and replace it. So as a consequence, the amount that was actually paid to Allied Trenchless was less than what was awarded by a fairly significant degree. Allied Trenchless was fine with all 3 of these changes, however, so no disputes are on the table for this. Next slide, please. So this is just my typical slide that I bring to you that shows the summary of what was authorized for a project and what was at this point in time spent for the project. So we were authorized in 2021-22 to spend $750,000 a year on a project. This project was actually under design before I arrived at the city. So everybody kind of hedged their bets a little bit on not stretching the full budgetary breadth that had been assigned to this project for this particular stage. So we had a design contract, which with Gray and Osborne, which is working to its completion. That design contract did include construction inspection services. That's included in what you're seeing before you in those expenses, as well as the final construction contract. So we did come in significantly under what was allocated for that, and excess funds, once we fully closed out the project and such, will return to the funding source. Next slide, please. And as I kind of blaze through some of what I was saying in my slides here, we are currently in design on the next stage of the pipe design. That project is euphemistically called the 22-23 project because I started it in 2022. But as I mentioned to the city council when we awarded the design for the 22-23 project, it's my desire to move our schedule back to a more friendly time to be doing these stormwater rehabilitation projects rather than doing them during the winters and during those seasons in which there's a lot of water flowing in our pipes and such. I'm trying to shift it to the design during the winter and then bidding the project in early spring so that we are doing our pipe repair work during the summer when the flows are at their lowest level. And so that's why that project took on the identity of the 23-24 or 22-23 project, to try and get ourselves back into that window of construction schedule. So we do have some tasks to remain. We're currently addressing the final payments to the contractor. We do need to file the project completion with the state so that we get state approval from the Department of Revenue, from Department of Labor Industries and Employment Services on the completion of a public works contract. That will formally close out the contract. And at that point in time, with retainage paid, we will actually be fully taken care of with this project. So any excess funds, as I mentioned before, will return to the funding source, which in this particular case is the surface water utility. Next slide, please. So that was my presentation on the completion of this particular project. Is there any questions that I can answer for you?
Thank you, Frank. Any questions? Seeing a nod of heads, which means it's a good presentation.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Okay, turning it directly over to Naomi for the next item on the new business. Juneteenth.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully I do it correctly this time. So I'm here to just talk about Juneteenth. Juneteenth is really a blend of words of June and 19. On June 19th, 1865, over 250,000 slaves were finally set free in Texas. It was coming 2 years after 1865 with the Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. So just a little background there. This slide here is basically giving you the timeline and also calling Juneteenth as Freedom Day or Independence Day. So in 2021, President Biden, he signed legislation making Juneteenth the 11th federal holiday. The last time that we had a federal holiday made was back in 1983. When Martin Luther King Jr. Day was created. So while local governments do not have to establish this, we're recommending that we do honor this and just showing you that other jurisdictions like Battleground, Bellingham, Burlington, and you see that all on the slide here, are other jurisdictions that adopted June 19th. So section, this is actually a typo here, it's 5.1 of the Mill Creek Personnel Manual lists the observed holidays. We wanted to include Juneteenth here in the Personnel Manual. Again, this is a typo. It's section 5.1 instead of 6.1. I apologize for that. So if there's any questions, we were just requesting if you would approve a resolution amending the section 5.1, that's it, I'm going to change it right now, of the Mill Creek Personnel Manual to establish Juneteenth as an observed holiday.
Any questions, Naomi?
Mayor, would you like a motion?
Sure, if there's no questions.
I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution amending section 5.1 of the Mill Creek Personnel Manual to establish Juneteenth as an observed holiday.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Secor's hand went up. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Naomi. Okay, Karen, you're up with me. Okay, we're moving on to a brief study session on our evaluation for our city manager. As I mentioned previously, we've retained Karen to again help facilitate this process of doing the review. The review based on the contract is just for the first 6 months since Martin started on July 1st, I think was the official date. Going forward, we'll be doing a review in early 2024 based on the goals and priorities we set at the retreat in next month. But for this initial review, it's the first 6 months. So what we put together in the packet is basically a modified version of the process that we used the prior two evaluations for the previous city manager. Scaled back a little. I think we scaled it back to limit the input to being from council and the leadership team, and we'll look at broadening that possibly with the full review in a little over a year. Karen, did you have anything you want to throw in, add?
Thank you, Mayor. No, it's basically the same process that the council has been used to. It's nice to see everyone. Hello. And we've just got a couple changes that the mayor has flagged. The only other one that I'd mention is that we will only do the exec sessions if all of you can be there, since it's really important to have all 7 council members.
So really, we don't need a formal action. Just want to make sure there's no objections, no questions for moving forward. Part of this, we wanted to get this taken care of tonight because the latter half of January, we're using our meetings for a retreat. The beginning of January, Karen will be on vacation. So we want to get this done. So to the extent she can, before the end of the year, she can possibly get rocking and rolling with some of the interviews, but we can get this done on time. All good?
I had one question.
Yeah, Councilmember Paddock.
So you answered one of the questions I had, which was this a process used in the past? To those that were participating in that process in the past, did it yield the results that we felt were appropriate? Meaning, is this a good process based on prior results?
Well, for 1 of 7, I think it has been, because that's why we continue to use it. We didn't really have it. We kind of jumped around in our processes before. And so I think we're continuing to refine it as we go forward, but I think we've kind of got the framework for a good process to use going forward. I don't know what others think.
Mayor, I would add too, I think this has been a good process, and part of this process has resulted in the reason why we decided we were going to start to set the priorities every year as a guide stone, so that it would aid us in this process even further, because that's something we felt we were missing as we were going through the process. So now we have our priorities that we're setting that we can look at and use those as a touchstone. So I would say that it's taking the process and it should be improved based on what we've been doing. So.
Any other questions, comments?
Thank you.
Okay, Karen, thank you for joining us. Look forward to getting going on this.
Thank you. It's good to see you all.
Yeah, if we don't see you until the January, have a good vacation.
And happy holidays to all of you. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays.
You
Karen.
too.
Bye.
Another vacation, Ms. Reed?
Okay, we're going to go back in time to old business, and I'm going to turn it over to Director Todd to talk about the interim planning management services contract.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. If either Joe or Naomi will bring that up for me, it'd be great.
Here comes Joe.
Joe is.
On cue.
Joe, right on cue.
You heard his name.
Let me set this up.
Thank you. Oh, nice. Those are good days. That is nice. I do appreciate that.
And I'll set up here. You have a clicker if you need. There's the keys.
Sorry?
Look at that.
As far as I know.
Much smoother than I can do it. Thank you.
Bounce you
So,
off.
what we're here tonight to talk about is again, an amendment to the contract for our interim planning manager services. So just as a reminder, the interim planning manager services contract covers these kinds of items: mentoring and managing the staff, development, coordination, review, code updates, grant applications. Remember, Clay White has brought us a couple of great grant applications. Thinking issues and awareness of those issues like the HB 1220. We've talked about making council presentations, and most importantly, he's done quite a bit of recruiting for us. And so we appreciate all those services. The contract was put in place as a $49,999 kind of contract with LDC back April 5th, 2020. That was when Tom Rogers was in the process of retiring, and we had not yet been able to hire anybody for that position. So we put that contract in place with the intent of being interim short-term contract. It turns out we ran out of money because it's taken a long time to fill this spot. And so we came to you in September and asked you to increase from the $49,999 that was done administratively by city staff to $75,000. That took your approval. And so that was intending to give us about 3 more months worth of LDC's services to get us through the hiring. We're going to reach that compensation limit in the middle of this month, like about today. Mr. White has spent enough hours this month. He spends about 12 hours a week. That we're going to run out of money, so we're going to need to extend that. And also the time limit on the original contract was anticipated to be well done by the end of 2022. We have no success in landing a permanent replacement for planning manager. We're going to go back. We've got a couple more applications, but we do not have, we made an offer and it was not accepted. So we're still looking for that. So I priced this before that happened to us, but I think $25,000 more for LDC to provide these services will give us about another 3 months. The other thing we've talked about quite a bit is that work needs to get started on the comp plan. We've been kind of putting that off, hoping the new person would take that on and make the plan theirs. But we're running out of time. Those grants have timelines to them. We talked about those when we accepted those 2 grants. And so particularly with those deadlines in June 2023, we want to get started on that. So the proposal is to have a contract amendment number 2 that adds $25,000 for about 3 more months of the interim planning manager services. Hopefully we'll be successful at replacing that. And then adding what seems like a big number, but it's $65,500 is the deliverables that were called deliverables 1 and 2, and 1 and 2A and 2B on those 2 different contracts. And those are the first parts that are like public engagement and getting the plan put together. There are things we need to do on the way towards having those deliverables completed by June to get reimbursed. So the $75,000 we had before, plus 25 for another 3 months, plus that 65.5, it gives you the 165,500 new limit. It gives us a new end date. I'm also putting it in the contract, a new end date of June 30th, 2023. We will have somebody hired by then, or we'll be back to talk to you again. Hopefully not. And we will also have that work done on deliverables 1 and 2 for the state contracts. I'll remember that all that grant related work is all reimbursable. So that 65.5 is spending the money that is in those contracts that we need to spend. That won't complete those contracts. Remember, we had 62.5 and 100,000 to spend. So we still got 162.5 to spend. This is just the first couple of steps. This will get somebody on board to help us, namely LDC can help us with those first 2 steps and start laying the plan out. So when we do get somebody hired, they can continue the plan on instead of having a cold start. We will be coming to you in January, likely. We'll put on RFQ over the holidays, probably go a couple of weeks into January to find some firm so any number of planning firms could bid on this and be our contract providers for the entire comp plan, the $300,000 to $400,000 worth of comp plan. So that we will do an RFQ to get those folks in line. So this work here is going to be on the path towards that. That was a lot of stuff all at once, but it's like people kind of following what I'm saying there. Kind of get on the path, get going, because we've got the deadlines, both to get the work done by the end of 2024, but more importantly, to make sure we don't miss out on those grant monies. And I put down there that grant work is going to be Mr. White and LDC staff. It might be staff people at a lower rate or more specialized. If there's mapping works to be done, they've got some GIS people who can do mapping for us. And we'll coordinate it with city staff work. So with that, there's questions, and if, when you're ready, there's a motion.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions? Any questions, John?
Yeah, I do. So this 25,000 that we're approving, additional 25,000. How much are we talking about in grant money that's hanging in the balance if we do this?
There was a cough in the room, John, so I missed that. Could you try again?
Yes, what,
Cough in the room because I've been doing it too. We're all.
how much grant money is in play that has to be used by June?
So the $100,000 for the middle housing grant and $62,500 is our comp plan money that has to be used in 2023. We'll also have $62,500 for comp plan money in 2024, and those are state deadlines that happen in the middle of the year is the trick.
So a total of 162,005.
Exactly.
Okay.
We
Or is
commit
it-
some funds to that too.
Pardon?
Didn't we commit some ARPA funds to that too, that have to be
So
spent or
in
utilized?
terms of our funding, so let's go back. So comp plan overall is going to be between $300,000 if we don't do things like an EIS and do a lot of the work internally, or up to 430, I think is the number we talked about during budgeting. If we have to do full EIS and do a bunch of public outreach. When Laura and I were putting this together, we budgeted about 400. I don't know if we would put full 430 in there. Subsequent to that, or kind of in concert with that, Mr. White landed the two grants. One of them is kind of automatic. Every city gets that comp plan grant, but the middle housing grant added to it. So we've got this 102, 225, I think, isn't it total?
That sounds right to me.
225 total towards the
Yeah.
430. And then the suggestion was that the difference there, whatever we need to spend, could be money we would say it's one-time thing that happens once every 10 years. And so you, council, kind of philosophically agreeing that that is something we might use some of this ARPA funds to feel better about it.
And that's why I was incorporating that into the conversation, because it also has a sunset date, right, where we have to utilize it by
It's way out.
December.
2026.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
all
not
right.
a problem there.
I assumed it was next year, my bad.
Yeah, no, it's this grant money for comp plan of middle housing. It has a short term. The other question I think I heard Councilmember Steckler is the 25,000. That's about equivalent to what we would be paying for salary and benefits for this position. So that's general fund money. So I'm not overspending the general fund for staffing for the planning and development services group. We're getting 12 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week, but we're getting really good services out of Mr. White. So I'm not blowing the general fund budget with a 25,000. That's kind of what it costs for that regular run rate. Is that about right? Or
Other
No,
questions?
And I'm not disputing the 25,000. I guess my question is there anything that we're going to be doing differently to ensure that this time you won't be coming back to us and asking for another 25,000?
Well, the only reason he's coming back is because we haven't been able to hire someone to come on staff. So, but for that, we wouldn't be here.
But even if you hired somebody, wouldn't you still have to bring them on board? I mean, we would be delayed anyway. I would think that we have to find a way with these individuals. We need to find a way to make it work.
yes.
Bringing a new person on, I think, is going to slow you down even more.
You're exactly right, Councilmember Steckler. You and I are losing sleep over this. This is not the way you like to run a project. You don't want to be hiring the project manager after you've already started the project, but that's where we are. Very tough environment. A lot of people in the planning business retired in the last year or two, or in the next year or two. And there's a lot of people moving from one jurisdiction to another. We've been a handful of folks that we have tried to get to come here and have not been successful. And so this is a tough environment. So we're trying to get somebody, again, because I want to have that person be committed to Mill Creek and helping our staff and continue all the way through 2024. Again, Mr. White's been fantastic. He is expert at this stuff. We cannot find anybody as good as Mr. White has been. And he's found some grant money, so I feel very, very good about the money we've spent. But yeah, I'm losing sleep over getting that person in place, and that's a kind of a number one tough thing for us to deal with right now.
Any other questions, Sean?
No, I understand the challenges between that, we're between a rock and a hard place. There's nothing we can do.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, we need, it's a wise investment. That's my opinion.
Yep.
Especially
Okay.
improving this.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Like
Move to adopt a resolution approving amendment number 2 to contract 2022-1675, a contract for interim planning management services.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is passed 7-0. Thank you, Mike.
Council. Appreciate it.
Okay, the next two items are back on the agenda because of the absences last week. So we discussed the legislative agenda at our meeting last week, but we want to put on the agenda in case the mayor pro tem or no, Councilmember Duque or Councilmember Paddock or Councilmember Steckler had any comments they wanted to add to it before we finalize it.
And Mayor, can I say
Yes.
just a few things too? Thank you. Before we look at it, I just want to draw your attention to a couple things that we may, I had brought up last week. I don't know if anybody went back and listened to the meeting, that I would like to add in some language that we want to defend against preemption of local land use authority, because that was something that was really important in HB 1782, and that bill has died. But I think it's very important that we have some language in here just to cover that. We want to make sure that we are keeping control over our zoning decisions. And also, thanks to the city attorney for doing the research for me, the bills are now allowed to be dropped. And there has been a bill, HB 5034, that addresses the pursuits. And I had Chief look over that for me, and he said that he would like just a couple tweaks, but I think we would be fine to change number 4. Instead of saying address vehicle pursuits for public safety, we can say it to that we support HB 5034 with minor changes. Since they have a bill now that dropped it, we don't need to say that we're asking for them to clarify, that they're clarifying. So that was the 2 things I wanted to add, and then open for discussion for anybody who wants to add anything else or any thoughts about that.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm having trouble getting internet, but there is another House bill going through the House, which is trying to eliminate the indemnification from law enforcement at this point. So that's something I'd like to put on the agenda as well.
What house? Can Grant,
I'm not sure. Maybe someone can look. I'm having trouble getting internet.
Grant may be able to look it up and see what's dropped.
I guess my question for us to ponder is, do we want, I mean, this, we talked about last week, making this kind of a biennial set of priorities. And if we start referring to specific bills that we hope may get adopted, but don't get adopted, are we better just generalizing and leaving it, supporting something addressing, for instance, the vehicle pursuits without specifically referencing a bill, so we don't have to keep coming back and changing and discuss? I mean, I'm more inclined to keep it general. I don't know what others think. Councilmember Duque, you had your light on?
Yes, I'm a big supporter of general, making sure we're following along with our vision without getting confused by, not confused, but by what, which bill, just making sure we're sticking to, these are what our points are and what we support. So I agree with being more general.
Yeah, and the way I think this could work is if a specific bill comes to us, we can have a brief discussion at a council meeting and direct the city manager, deputy city manager to sign in and submit comments on the behalf of the city in support of a specific bill. Thoughts, Councilmember Paddock?
Are there, when I did go back and watch the last session and read through these, are we asking for specific outcomes on specific topics? Because some of these, if you go through like HB 1220, use that because it's the first one, it doesn't really say we're asking for anything. Are we asking for a particular outcome based on what that bill is trying to do or what that bill tried to do?
I see the city attorney has his hand up. Did you want to comment on that or something different?
I was just gonna say, Mayor, I think there might be some value in keeping general at this time. And the only reason I say that is, although HB or SB 5034 does address vehicle pursuits and addresses, I think, the legal test for entitlement to pursuit, lowering the standard from probable cause to reasonable suspicion, which I believe is what it had been in the past. There may be other bills addressing this subject that will be filed before the session starts. And that may address some of the concerns that, or the amendments that the chief might have been looking to have in there. So it might have some value retaining the general language now and then follow these bills as they go through and see which one, if there are multiple bills on the same subject, which one we prefer, the city council might prefer.
Right. I think the answer in part is this is the first time we've adopted a legislative agenda that I remember. So I think this is going to be a learning experience for how we want it to be going forward. So I don't know what the right answer is. Because
I'd be a little better than.
with the legislature, it's a sausage making process. So I don't know what to ask for.
Mhm.
So. Any other thoughts, comments on the legislative agenda? And again, let's all keep our eyes peeled for bills so that as stuff comes up and as it gets to hearing, if it's important to us, we can get in touch with our representatives and our senator or direct staff to get comments submitted on behalf of the city so we can be more proactive. Councilmember Duque.
It's not about this specifically, but I just wanted to flag for everyone again. I really think we should try to move away from DRCC as the name of that parcel of land. I'll keep saying it until we get a different name that either describes the geographical area or something that is just more, just seeing a whole list of abbreviations is a lot. And I'd like us to think about that again.
The Mill Creek Property of Dreams.
Sounds like a sweepstakes.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and did I have any objections to adding the language for about defend against preemption of local land use authority on there?
Any objections? I don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
I think that was also another one when Mayor Pro Tem and I discussed it, rather than referencing a specific bill that died last session that we don't know what form it's going to be introduced this session. Let's stick with the general principle. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So one of the AWC provides a lot of guidance that we've been reading. Mayor Pro Tem and I have been researching over the past few months. One of the key tools that we need to put together is a one-page summary of all of our legislative priorities that basically, if they are general, would list what those priorities are as well as what we're asking, what the result will be, and then probably some dollar amounts as well associated with some of those if it's applicable. So there is guidance online, and so we can review that. I'm not sure if we were going to create a legislative committee. I think there was discussion about that recently, but that one pager is really important for our state electeds to take with them and for us to distribute. Thank you.
Any final thoughts, comments? Okay, and that brings us to the other item on new business, again, put on the agenda from last week, is just the retreat agenda. So it's similar to last year, 2 meetings. We'll keep them to 3.5 hours. There will be a study session at a meeting, bless you, prior to the retreat to discuss the results of the surveys so that we don't spend an hour or two at one of the retreat nights going over that. That's going to be part of our homework. So any final thoughts on the retreat agenda?
The one question I had,
Yeah.
excuse me, one of the line items was the council priorities and progress report. Who's putting that together? Is that?
I think that will be between the city manager and primarily the city manager, believe.
Yeah, I believe that Is that for, I think, reflecting on 2022 priorities? I think, is that the,
It's the first night, I think it's part of the first night's agenda.
yeah, I think it's a recap of 2022. and,
Okay.
Reviewing what was accomplished, what was not, and progress, if things haven't started.
Mhm. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda for the evening. Item A, approval of checks number 6519 through 6546. Do we have a number missing? There's 4 digits in the first check number and 5 digits in the second. Do we have the? Thank you. Thank you. Checks number 65419 through 65461 and ACH wire transfers in the amount of $118,338.22. Audit committee was council members Allison and Paddock. Any exceptions?
No exceptions.
No.
Item B, payroll and benefit ACH payments in the amount of $211,808.27. Any
No
exceptions?
No
No exceptions.
Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes 7-0. Reports, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. First report is regarding South County Fire. Today is the first day that the firefighters set foot in our Station 76. I talked to Chief Hovis this morning about heading up there, and we took the leadership team up there to meet Captain Justin Pickens and his staff. All the staff members are pretty elated. They're excited to be up there. Transition went pretty smoothly from an operational standpoint. The major calls will be going out to Station 21. He didn't say how long. They are going on certain calls, and they did have one this morning already, but most of them are going out to 21, anything major, so that they can get the station set up to accommodate their operations here. And in July, there'll probably be some additional transitions on employee firefighters that rotate through the station. They might have new staff there. It's something they do on a yearly basis just to get their firefighters kind of accommodated to different stations on a scheduled basis. So, but everything went pretty well according to the captain up there. So can assure the public and our communities that there are no hiccups and they've got us covered. The second on the CQC, the Center for Quality Community is a partner with AWC, and they are a 501c3 that focuses on scholarship programs supporting high school students, as well as high school seniors, as well as who want to be active leaders in government communities or even in schools. Or those who also want to pursue post-secondary education. What they basically try to do is cultivate local government leaders for the future. This year, they're offering 10 $2,500 scholarships. The deadline for submittals for the City of Mill Creek is December 31st. We're currently working with the Chamber and the Kiwanis to reach out to the local schools and to bring in those applicants. So a little bit about the process. On the 13th, we'll be submitting our selection of the applicants forward to CQC for further review. One of the key elements of that process is the city's letter that will go with that application to the CQC. So I'm hoping we'll get some good applicants in there so we can really support the person that we choose to move forward. later on, and I'll elaborate more on the process in January when we get to that point. Because it goes all the way, I think through March or May. Is there any questions on South County Fire or the CQC scholarship?
Not
One
seeing
more.
any. Oh, Melissa, I'm sorry.
I hadn't pressed my light. I was just raising my hand.
That's where you confused me. I'm looking for your light because I never see it.
I haven't. I've been on online meetings absolutely the whole morning. I saw that does the fire station number change?
No, it has not at this
Will it?
point. I know there's a 76. I think Mike has some information that I don't. We did have some discussion this morning about how the 76 station got its number, and it's based on Snohomish Regional's decision. a while
I saw
back.
some chatter on social media and I went, oh, I don't know. I could
I
ask.
don't know what that's all. Mike, do you have anything to elaborate on?
Well, I think they told us this morning that Snohomish Regional Fire Authority would like, or excuse me, Snohomish Regional Fire and Rescue Surfer would like to keep the 7 number because it matches all the other 7 numbers. And so there's a negotiation about who gets that. And I think the implication is that they would like to keep the 76 number with Surfer. And so something in the 0s or the 10s or the 20s that matches other stations in South County Fire, maybe where it ends up.
Okay. Do we know when that would happen?
I think it sounded like they were just talking about it right immediately. So if you drive by today, the Surfer sign is gone and now it reveals that it's Station 76 and District 7 still. So the old wood sign is still there. They'll be changing that.
Okay.
It's one of the many things. Right now, it's kind of like moving in, it's kind of like dorm move-in day over there. A lot of stuff, a lot of boxes, a lot of craziness. So their main focus is on getting set up. They had a call, as the city manager said, within the first half hour they were here. So they're
Ready to
busy
go.
already. So
And that is my follow-up question, because I had that the last meeting I was able to attend, was when can we go? So you're saying it's dorm move-in day, not gonna do that. So do you think in January, it seems like an appropriate time for whoever? I'm glad that the leadership team was able to attend, but also as city council members, I want to make sure whether we go in and whoever's available, depending on time, go separately and whatever makes sense.
yeah, I think Jody Hawkins is working with Leslie Hines and trying to figure out another, not too formal event, but a way to get out. I think it's an excellent idea for us to go welcome them, but today was the day where it's not a day to go
Yeah.
visit them, sort of thing. So this
Sounds
is great.
good. Yeah, and I
But
want
think
to be
after the holidays,
respectful.
we'll get something going
Okay, great. So after the holiday seems like the most appropriate time.
and we'll let you know
No
more.
cookies now. Okay.
That may be a different question. Firefighters love to eat, so but I think we're delivering the cookies today where they've got the door closed because they're trying to unpack the boxes and rearrange stuff is probably not the day for cookies. So, yeah. Thank you.
Anything further?
Yeah, one more report. I did have a few meetings last week, one with the Youth Advisory Board. It's nice to see that we have a little over 50 volunteers that represent educational institutions across Mill Creek, not just Jackson High School, but other educational programs as well. So good opportunity for the kids to get together, not only volunteer, but work together from those different institutions. I met a few of them and gave a short speech at the beginning and just thanked them for being here. The second meeting was with the Parks and Rec Board as well. I didn't have a chance to meet. I didn't meet with the AMB board. Wanted to provide just some information on the city's request from those boards to work with the city as we work on our 2023 project to revitalize the city. So I did follow up that meeting with an email to both boards requesting a list of projects by December 31st. Subject to change a bit, but we'll give them some flexibility as we move forward and as the city works on our harbor project internally. So that's the end of my reports, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager. Well, this is the point of the meeting where I usually ask for your reports and I frequently hear I don't have a report, but, well, tonight I don't have a report, but this meeting of the year, got a few things I want to say. In our company, we have our monthly board meetings and our CFO always goes through the financials, always talking about year over year, this change, that change. We had our meeting beginning in December. It made me think year over year, where were we last year compared to this year? And it made me realize we are in a far different place today than we were 1 year ago. Let's think about it. Where were we? December last year, our city manager had resigned. Our police chief had resigned. We had numerous vacancies in our police department, and we had no idea how we were going to provide fire services to our residents. We are in a far different and a far better place. I just started making a list for myself of what happened in 2022. We held our first retreat in March since 2018. After a ton of legwork by staff, we recommended to the voters annexing to South County, which the voters approved in April overwhelmingly with 75% support. After a national search, we hired Martin as our city manager. Martin then hired Laurel as our deputy city manager. We hired Stan White as our new police chief. We have a finance director starting in January. I have to cross out one line now, unfortunately. We reopened City Hall after being shut down for 2 years due to COVID. We began putting together a plan for deploying our $5.8 million in ARPA funds. We installed the new AV system we have here to allow better access for the public. We held our first Veterans Day ceremonies since 2019? We had 3 very successful parties in the park. We passed a balanced budget again for the coming biennium and a 6-year capital improvement plan and a 6-year TIP, transportation improvement plan, that preserves our general fund reserve, and the projections are it'll preserve it for at least the next 6 years. We established, as we finalized tonight, our legislative agenda. It's the first one I recall, at least in my 9 years. I'm not sure if Councilmember Todd recalls doing one. Maybe we did one in the past, but we haven't done one recently. We continue to engage in the community. We've continued our coffee chats. We took them outside of the virtual realm this year, held a couple in person, which hopefully will build on that success. We've engaged with the Mill Creek Chamber, including welcoming many new businesses this past year. And as we heard at the last meeting, we're starting discussions with the Economic Alliance and helping us to put together a strategic plan. And to me, one of the more important things is we're institutionalizing having a retreat every year so we can set goals and priorities to measure not just our city manager and staff against, but so citizens know what to expect from us. I think that's a big change, and hopefully we'll continue that in years to come. I know there's more things, but I have to say, as I was reflecting on this has been my most favorite of my 9 years on the council. We still have a lot of work ahead of us. Some would say they're challenges. I think they're opportunities. We're going to be dealing with the ARPA funds. We're going to be dealing with the Mill Creek Property of Dreams. We're going to be dealing with the comp plan and Mill Creek Boulevard. But there are a lot of positive things going on here. We've heard too much in the past about the negativity, and I just wanted to focus on the positive stuff that's been happening. A lot of hard work by Martin and his entire staff, his leadership team. I don't want to call it individuals because I'll forget someone. But all of you contributed. Thank you for all you've done and continue to do for the city. And thank you to each of you up here. Our city manager puts together our team. He inherits some of it and the others he puts together. We don't select our team, with one exception this year. The voters select our team. I think we've got a pretty dang good team. We're working well together. I want to thank Stephanie as Mayor Pro Tem for helping work with me to work with Martin to keep not only the ship pointed in a direction, but trying to keep that ship moving forward in a direction. And I think we as a group have done a pretty darn good job in the past year. And I look forward to continuing it in the coming year. So as we close out 2022, I'm excited and optimistic. I hope everyone else is heading into the new year. And I just want to wish everyone happy holidays for however you celebrate with your families, and wish everyone a happy and safe new year. So that's my report tonight. Council, Mayor Pro Tem, any report tonight?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. With that in mind, I have part report, part comments to give tonight. So I I didn't list them out, but I did have on here. We did accomplish a lot this year. And when I look across over here, we have the new city manager, we have new deputy city manager, we have the new police chief in here. And we accomplished a lot. And I think our council does a really good job of coming together and finding common ground and working together. And I don't think that a lot of councils can say that. And I'm really proud of us for that, that we put things aside and come together and work on accomplishing things. So I just want to leave that with you as we go out in this year. And more to a report type of note, I do want to let everybody know that I will be cutting the ribbon on the pet pantry that is going to be opening at Paddywhack this weekend. It's Sunday. I keep writing Saturday, but it is Sunday at 10:45 a.m. And they have a new pet pantry that has been donated as a service project by a Girl Scout troop. And so I'm really excited to be able to go out there. I hope to see lots of you. And it's really valuable. I guess it's double exciting for me because I feel like this is one of our small businesses and they are the heart of our community. And also this is a Girl Scout troop that has donated this pantry. And I think when you think of Girl Scouts, you think of cookies, but the Girl Scouts, the mission of Girl Scouts is really to take young leaders and teach them how to find problems in their community and come up with a solution. And this is something that they've decided was a problem and they have came up with the solution for. And so it's an honor for me to go to that event this weekend. As you heard from the health department, we had our health department meeting tonight that may or may not be our last health department meeting. They didn't really answer that for us this evening, but the makeup of the board for the health department is changing, as they said, as we merge into being a department with the county. That said, there may be just a few meetings left over to tie up loose ends in which I would continue over because we have a 2-year term before that part of our board gets dissolved. So they didn't really give us the full details about whether or not we're going to be meeting again today. So I guess we'll find out. But I want to let you guys know that and also point out to you that flu, RSV, and COVID are on the rise. They kept pointing that out just and telling everyone to make sure they get vaccinated. I think that is all. Okay. Yep. And I think that was all my main things. I just want to thank all the staff for all their hard work that they do. And you accomplished a lot this year. And it's so good to be out in the community again, have so many things open, so many activities starting to come back and be out in the community and feeling how happy everybody is about that again. So thank you for your hard work. And I hope all of you have a great holiday vacation as well. Thanks.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thanks, Mayor. Real brief. Parks Board met last week. We did have Martin as a guest speaker there. It was nice to have him. We are working diligently on the use of the ARPA funds that we had talked about giving to the Parks Board and allowing them to put a project or two forward. And on that, I will remind Martin that I still need that wetland study if possible in that Cougar Park 2 vicinity to see if that's still usable land in that regard. And the bill I was trying to look for earlier had to do with qualified immunity. So that's the catchphrase, if the city attorney is still on and listening, that I was looking for. And I'll just be really succinct. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy Hanukkah. And it's been an absolute pleasure all these years working with all of you. And I look forward to what the future holds for all of us. Thank you. God bless.
Councilmember Steckler.
No report, but I do want to wish happy holidays to everyone, to the city and the council. It is a pleasure to work with you all. Thank you.
Councilmember Ellison.
No reports, but again, happy Hanukkah, happy Merry Christmas, enjoy your breaks. And this was my first year on council and to me, I have nothing to compare it to, but good work, everyone, because it did seem like there was an awful lot that got accomplished.
Councilmember Duque.
No tengo, no, I'm just kidding. I was gonna try to switch up to be in Spanish. As others have said, it's been a year for me, so this is pretty incredible. So thank you for everyone's hard work, and I really appreciate it. Hanukkah starts a sundown on Sunday, so happy Hanukkah for those who celebrate. Happy Merry Christmas and happy Kwanzaa. That starts December 26th for everyone in any way that you celebrate this times, and good luck for the snow that potentially might come next week. Ominous sounding.
And that brings us to our final opportunity for audience communication. Oh, Sean, gosh darn it. See, I mean, it used to be easy with the way we had set, because you just go down the row and it was done. Councilmember Paddock, the floor is yours.
It used to be easy before I was here.
right.
Very much. So I missed last week and appreciate that accommodation, but I did want to note that I watched the recording and I guess want to express appreciation, continued support for what the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County is doing. Not just here in the city, but across the county. And I guess lend my support to whatever activities they might be doing that we would want to have them do here in the city. The other one is, tonight we did something I think that was really important. Obviously, the anti-Semitism proclamation, as well as recognizing Juneteenth as a holiday for the staff. And, I think I'd said this at the end of the last meeting for a different reason, but doing those two things, I think reinforced our guiding principles. And I'm just going to read it again, of supporting an environment that honors the value and dignity of all individuals. I think we did that today. We lived up to our principles today. And I think we should continue to look at every opportunity to do that in every way we possibly can. So I feel proud to be part of the council, a council that acts as we say we're going to. And just admiration and appreciation for the staff. 90 days in, I had no idea how the city was run well and in the past and in the future. And I understand now how the city is run so well. It's the people that lead it. And thank you and appreciate being part of the council. Happy holidays.
And now brings us to the final audience community. Oh, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one more comment. Thanks to Director Todd, who brought my attention to an event that we're holding tomorrow. And I want, you see us sitting here, all 5 or 6 of us, and we got to stop and think about all the people, the other 50 plus that actually do the work. And we try to continue recognizing those individuals as well. So going forward, the rest of this year and into next biennium, it's one of our priorities is to also recognize every single employee that contributes to our success. Couldn't do it without them. So tomorrow we'll be having an employee lunch where the city leadership is going to treat our employees to lunch tomorrow. So it's more of a culture, teamwork building event as well, and to celebrate their success and our appreciation for the work they do. So just want to mention that. Thank you.
Great. Okay, and I think now we're at audience communication. Barb, floor is yours. I'll give you 4 minutes to end of the year.
No, I won't take that long. Barb Heidel, 1401 144th Place, Southeast Mill Creek. Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to address an issue that I'm thrilled is fixed. I don't know if it's the Public Works Department that's in charge of the speed sign registering on Mill Creek Boulevard, but it had been out for many months. And being that I walk along there a lot, I see how fast people are going. So I am thrilled that it's working again. And once again, some people will look to see how fast they're going and slow down because they see they're going well over the speed limit. So I appreciate so much that it was finally fixed. Second, I want to wish everyone, council members, the whole complete city staff, everybody, a very special holiday season. May you and your family have a healthy, relaxing, and happy time. May the start of 2023 be a good one for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb.
Happy New Year.
Anyone online like to address the council? Seen a nod of heads. With that, we will adjourn for the last time in 2022 at 7:50 and reconvene on January 3rd. Have a happy holiday and happy New Year, everyone.